Give everybody a few minutes to jump on. Well, welcome aboard. I'm just browsing the internet to just make sure there's nothing else I'm missing on the realignment front, since that's once again heating up. Probably about 2 weeks later than it did. I guess was it last year or year before, when the USC and UCLA thing went down, and then the Big 12 one. So that might have been this time last year. I don't remember. But greetings back from Charlotte. Well, I've been back for a few days. It kind of took yesterday to have a little downtime, but ACC Kickoff event went very well for Georgia Tech. I thought Brent Key did a great job. I thought the players did a great job. Jordan Williams is a guy that I'm extremely proud of, like how he's developed as a person and letting his personality shine, and being, a guy that's been able to go out and talk to the media. He was very shy early on and didn't show you kind of his full personality. And he was totally hamming it up in Charlotte, as was Miles Brooks. So that was cool. Sylvain was great. So I think it's going to be an interesting couple of months now. We're getting ready to hit fall camp that starts on the 1st. Should have decent access for camp. Still waiting on the final word on what the plan is, but the early kind of hints have been that we should have some good access. So that would be cool. Exciting for JOL subscribers, people who follow me other ways too that are too cheap. So if you're not a subscriber, I'd suggest it's a great time to jump in. Community is awesome, and it's a great time to follow the Jackets, as maybe this is the rise of the Brent Key era of Georgia Tech football. Are we going to do a preseason lunch at Local 3? Working on that. I think that's definitely in the cards. It's something I've talked to my friend Chris about, and I think that we're going to do that. So it's going to be interesting. Jumping in back into the ACC Kickoff event, it was a little weird because they moved it to 3 days. I thought it was a little too spread out. Missed some opportunity to see some people that I would normally see there. It felt a little weird, like a little forced to be that spread out, given the size of the media. It's not the same as the SEC one. I had been in Nashville the week before helping our Alabama site. And there's just it's like such a different animal. That's what I love about the ACC one. It's more chilled, laid back. You get better access. I can go over and talk to Brent Key and have like a normal conversation. People aren't ushered around like the Pope. So I think that's a lot better. What else kind of stood out? Obviously people picked up on some different things we talked about in the breakout sessions. Sylvain's comment about the strength and conditioning program, which came from a purely honest standpoint by his view of things as a guy that's new to all of that world. He's incredibly honest about all that stuff, and I found that really refreshing. Miles is always great. So is Jordan. I thought all of them did a great job. They get asked some weird questions by some people. There's always people with specific agendas they like to write about at that event, and they did a good job of handling that. I thought Jordan did a great job of dealing with things like people asking about the quarterbacks or just different questions about the offense. And then the defensive guys, obviously, they had a pretty good run last year, so that went a little more smoothly, I think, for them. Kind of looking at the overview, I'm not sure where they're going to be picked yet in the final tallies for the preseason awards. I'm very curious to see what Georgia Tech ends up. I don't know what the final say will be there. It's going to be interesting because the votes don't finish until Sunday night, so I have no feel for that. There was kind of a decent sized crowd from Georgia Tech there, so maybe there'll be a little bit better representation of some of the guys that are not. I always say this, but Clemson, Florida State, and then the Virginia schools and Carolina schools are always a little more heavily represented in that stuff. So this will be a little bit different look with just the way the event was spread out so differently. So I'm hoping that maybe the preseason teams will be a little more spread out and a little less very Clemson, North Carolina, NC State heavy like they've been. What else from there? I listened to the head of officials talk. I didn't actually write about this on the site. I just happened to be in the room when he was doing his speech. That was when I was typing up Brett Key from our breakout session, and he seems like a better dude than the guy he replaced. So the guy he replaced, I thought, was not great at his job. So hopefully this guy does a better job. I know that a lot of coaches were frustrated by the previous head of officials. I think this guy's been in the job for about a year now and seemed like a nice enough guy. He answered questions pretty straightforward. One of the things he did say that I agree with that makes a lot of sense is if you can't figure out in 60 seconds like what's going on in a replay, or 2 minutes or 90 seconds or whatever the window is, that they typically figure that stuff out, then they should just stop it and let the play stand. Because if you're having to like pick some sort of minute pixelated angle of like 3 different things, that's just sort of beyond the scope of the game, and like it's probably a little bit much to do that. So I think that I found that as an interesting comment. It's something I hadn't thought about a lot because you're talking about speeding up the game and what that would look like. So that's something I'm definitely interested in some a little bit faster games. One of the things that sucks for us is people cover it is, I'm working right after the game. So like if that's going on, it's harder to watch other games and stuff. And the quicker the pace is, the more kind of my day I get back, regardless of when the game ends. So I'm not stuck working till 1 a.m. if it's a night game, or I can get out and watch the evening games, or get out and watch even a 7, or watch the end of the 3:30 game sometimes. So that'll definitely be interesting. Other stuff from Charlotte. I talked to some other reporters, just kind of getting, taking a little bit of temperature on just what they're hearing with realignment. Is always Florida State. People are very adamant that Florida State's going to do whatever Florida State wants to do, and they're going to do this and that and the other thing. And I've always found that like 99% of the time that they seem to be very focused on whatever appeases their fan base. It's sort of like a politician, like how their leadership works. Like politicians, like they will fire up their base with whatever they think is going to fire them up. And I just don't see how you get out of the grant of rights unless you get a bunch of teams to jump. So I don't understand. I mean, Florida State could get sued into the Stone Age if they tried to jump. Reading some of the reports from today, it certainly seems like the Big 12 is not interested. From everything I've gathered from knowing people at some of the other TV networks, that the SEC is kind of in a paused state right now in terms of expansion. They couldn't even get approval to go to a nine game schedule financially, from according to my sources. So it seems like it's very unlikely that ESPN, that's laying people off right now left and right, is going to okay them spending another $250-300 million to add 2 teams to the league. So, or $500 million to add 4. So I think the Big 12 is doing whatever they're doing. And then my gut has been on this. I posted this on the board that I wouldn't be shocked to see if the ACC and what's left of the Pac-12, there's some sort of something there, whether it's an actual like merger to try to make like a stronger third conference, which depending on which teams you added could be stronger than the Big 12. The Big 12 is not great as it is right now. So I'm curious what that looks like in football. And, you know, if you're Clemson and Florida State, I think your benefit is being the big dog and being the big fish in a small pond and not being relegated to what's happened to Arkansas or some of these other teams that used to win their conference, Texas A&M, that are just sort of marginalized. I think you're going to see that happen now with Texas and Oklahoma if they're not careful. They're going to become marginalized as the Alabamas and the Georgias and the whoever else kind of takes control of that conference. And it's going to be interesting to see what the reaction of all that is. And the other thing, I was talking to a really good source today, and he had a good point to me. He goes, look, these people are all kind of jumping around right now. No one knows what's going to happen in 4 years. And the big balloon that's hanging over all of this is what happens with the situation if suddenly student athletes become employees, which will likely come from California. And that's where you see the super conference thing, I think, happen. So then it's, you know, all bets are off. If they go to a super conference, that sort of eliminates a lot of this stuff and it makes it all kind of a moot point. So like you're better off actually, in my estimation, winning big right now outside of the SEC or the Big Ten, if you can, positioning yourself. So when those teams, when those leagues, if they become the 2 big powers or whatever happens, they're going to drop off the Vanderbilts and the Missouris of the world. And you got a chance to jump on that boat. I don't see Rutgers making the leap up if it's going to be a 40-team league or something. So that's you know that would be my advice. If I was running Clemson, that would be the way I would look at it. You're making plenty of money right now. Like I would not sell my soul or fight to try to get out of that and get into the SEC and maybe struggle for a year or two at a key moment where you could end up being dropped. So maybe that's the pessimist in me, but that's how I look at it. There's going to be, I don't think Ole Miss or Illinois would survive maybe this model either, by the way. Someone mentioned in the chat that those are 2 teams. I think all of those teams, Mississippi State, all of them get cut if you go to a super league. And it kills what's great about college football. But I'm of the hope that doesn't happen because I think the money's not going to be there to make it happen, but we'll see. So getting in, I guess we can slide into realignment real quick. Colorado going back to the Big 12 is sort of hilarious given how they left. The Big 12 is not very good. I think basketball wise, it's pretty good, but football wise, who's the power team in that conference now? There's no Clemson. They're not even a Florida State. There's no one that's won anything other than UCF's fake championship in the last, whatever. UCF's won 2 BCS bowl games. Does anyone out? Baylor and TCU have had some good runs. TCU just got killed in the championship game. I don't know. So that's my thought there. I'm going to get into some questions here and kind of jump through those real quick. What does the overall health of the team look like going into camp other than Leo? Are there any other major injuries you should be concerned about? Nothing that I'm aware of right now, but I also am not like one of those people that gets deep into the weeds and that stuff like this far out ahead of camp. Like, I feel like Brent Key would have come out and said, hey, so-and-so is out for the year or whatever. If there was another season-ending injury, he'd have made a point to make that. So I think that, they're probably doing okay. There's always going to be guys bumps and bruises and different things and tweaks and guys who got hurt in summer workouts or whatever. And as far as I know, there's nothing like super serious looming over. But again, I haven't been digging into that. So that's his question in the chat. I don't know what Pac-12 teams the ACC would add if they were to do that, and what it would even look like the equation. I think it would be strictly a money thing, obviously, and you'd have as I joked on the board, the all conference, what did I call it? The all coastal conference, like coastal teams, haha. But if Washington and Oregon were there and wanted to jump, and if Arizona State, or Cal or Stanford, I don't know that everyone wants Cal, but Utah, any of those teams would be good. I don't know about the Washington States, the Oregon States of the world, but it's not my call to make that decision. So is what it is. What's the off-the-record view of Georgia Tech right now from some of the other media members and coaches you talked to this week? How long do they expect Key to turn things around? I think most people think they're going to be sort of where I have them in that 4 to 7 win range, and just depends on a lot of how the other teams play and stuff. Like, one of the big things I was talking to somebody about on Tuesday was just like, what is Wake Forest this year? Like, no one knows. They've lost a bunch of pieces the last few years. They've been terrible on defense really since they got good. They've been terrible on defense. The defense carried them their first 2 years, and then they've not been good really since then. So I appreciate the thank yous from everybody. And when you look at Wake Forest, like, Dave's a great coach. They're very competitive, but are they going to be good this year? I think this might be like a down year for them, but I could be wrong. Like, I thought Duke was going to be awful last year, and Mike Elko did one of the greatest coaching jobs I've ever seen. So, I think Duke will level out a little bit this year just because their schedule's harder. But, I was looking at everything. I just don't, I think no one knows what like North Carolina is right now, Pitt, NC State, all the sort of middle tier teams. And that's why you see people picking like Louisville to win 9-10 games, because when you look at Louisville's schedule, it's not hard. So if the guy coaches well and they gel with all those new players, they should be pretty good. But they could lose week 1 to Georgia Tech, and that could send them in a slow spiral where they win 5-6 games. So you just don't know. I think that would be interesting to see like how that all kind of unfolds. But I think most of the people think it's going to take 2 or 3 years for Brent to really get things rolling. That would be my expectation. I think that you want to have some proof of concept in year 1, so being competitive, hopefully going to a bowl game, and then next year pushing that a little bit further along. And then in year 3 is when you would expect to be really competing, because that's where, say, this class, the 2024 class, which you'll read something on Rivals tomorrow that I did with, I think it'll run tomorrow, with John Garcia Jr., where we talked about, Georgia Tech and where they might land in the final recruiting rankings for the cycle, which you guys will find interesting. And I gave my prediction. But, if he keeps his class together, for example, like, that's the core of what could be a really good team in 2 years, like, along with what they already have in place, and guys getting older in the Haynes King, Zach Pyrons, the DJ Moores, those guys all being older at that point and kind of gelling into something. Evan Dickens, like guys they think a lot of that are younger on the team right now. In 2 years, they'll have a lot more experience. So that's when you feel like you would kind of amp things up more. Based on Lane Kiffin's comments and the two seeming dual pieces of congressional legislation targeting sports NIL and the passionate debate the fans are having on the issue, what's the correct take here? What's your take? Some people seem upset that inducements are being paid to players to come to and stay at school. Should this be allowed or not? It's my understanding it's impossible to prevent. So if it can be prevented, people will just go around the rules. How could it be regulated? Prior to NIL, it was pretty widely acknowledged that blankety blank, who I'm not going to say, got a deal from blank school shoe company as a college player, and there's lots of companies that skirt the rules. Yeah, cheating has been going on forever. The amount of money just has changed, right? Like in what was maybe being offered to certain players that we all know and watched play basketball 15 years ago is now chump change to these people. And it's why the recruiting may have changed dramatically at certain schools that all of us spend a lot of time watching play. If you following me. So yeah, the money's changed and it's ratcheted up, and a lot of stuff's just over the table. So if you look at the teams that are historically accused of cheating, they're the ones that have been most out in front in a lot of this NIL stuff. And some of the ones that cheated that didn't have as much money are the ones that have the coaches that are most vocally complaining right now because they don't feel like they have a level playing field. And I think that's going to be interesting to watch all this stuff. So, what is the right solution to this? I don't think there is one because it's a flawed system. Like the reality is the only honest way to do this would be if you're going to pay them money is to make them employees and pay them shares based on what the revenue is for the sport, like what the TV deals are, and this is what you get, and you have a collective bargaining agreement and all of that stuff. But the reality is that's no one wants that because no one wants an even playing field. That's why there's not a salary cap in baseball, right? Like in a lot of sports, they've tried to avoid that, or they have ways around it, like a luxury tax or different things. No one wants a level playing field. They want to be able, both the players who are want the most they can make, and the owners who are greedy and cheap at the same time. And so you have a mixture of all of that, and you have guys that like profit on being owners in some of these pro sports leagues who like don't even have a competitive product just because they can spend the bare minimum and make money. So yeah, I just think I don't know how the hell you police it. Like, to be honest with you, I don't know how the only thing I can think of is everything has to be out available, like on a website that's a transparent system, sort of like the transfer portal thing. But the problem with that is that people in my business will crack into that and see what the numbers are and start publishing people's private financial information and cause a bunch of drama. So I don't know what you do. It seems like a real mess. We're hearing a lot of positives about the attitude and camaraderie in the locker room under Brent Key. Without providing any specifics, what are some of the negative challenges that Brent Key is having to overcome as well? I think the biggest challenge they have right now, and this has been sort of my opinion about all this, is that they don't have as much what Paul Johnson used to call 1 through 8 talent, right? Like the high end of your roster. So like the first year Paul Johnson, or the second year, let's say the year they won the ACC championship, he had Derek Morgan, he had Morgan Burnett, he had Bebe, he had Josh Nesbitt as quarterback, John Dwyer. You had who else was on that team? Well, let's just stop there. There's 5 guys that are all sort of NFL talents. Though Nesbitt didn't really have a pro career, but was a extremely great college quarterback and athlete and tough warrior guy. And you had, let's say, Roddy Jones and Anthony Allen or whoever else you want to add into that mix. Stephen Hill. You had like a lot of 1 through 8 talent, right? This team may have those guys eventually, but I don't see a ton of I think, right now your top guys are like Lamiles Brooks, Sylvain, Jordan Williams, who they brought to ACC Kickoff, who's had his own struggles. With the consistency all the time. To Dallas, like I don't know, like I think the middle's getting better, like that 9 through whatever 50. But right now, the top end, they just don't quite have enough guys, and it's going to come down to like whether the Dominique Blaylocks or the Abdul Janays or the whoever Trinelius Tatum, whoever it is, like these guys step up and turn into something. Even someone like Sylvain, who I put in there, he's got to show it right consistently. So Eric Singleton is a guy that Russell brought up in the chat that people have been raving about. Like that he's just sort of a freak speed guy, sort of like a Marion Brown, like but with better hands and better size. So yeah, you just don't know who those guys. I guess that's my biggest question right now. That's the thing I look at, and when you talk about the locker room, I think the locker room's bought in, but how do they handle adversity? Like how do they, if that Louisville game goes south, how do you, or if they have another blowout game where they get their butts kicked, like how do they respond to that? And that's going to be the big things that kind of turn and manipulate kind of the things that Brent Key has to learn to manipulate and control and massage and all those things you want to use in terms of coaching. And that's where, experience will come in for him. And he's going to have to lean on his many years of working as a coach and understanding how to get the most out of his dudes. Finish this sentence. Georgia Tech's surprising 8-win season was driven primarily by the team's unexpected scoring offense, right? Like, so the offense has not been like, for all the knocks on Paul Johnson's offense, they scored a lot of points and consistently scored a lot of points. And even though they slowed the game down, they were efficient in scoring categories. And that has been non-existent basically really since, the whatever last decent win they had in 2018 was. Just haven't scored many points in many games. I mean, you gotta start scoring 28, 30 points, 35 points here and there, like consistently. Like they just haven't done that, especially in ACC play. Score more points than the opposition isn't sufficient. Yeah, I think it's a sustained, like the offense is able to, the offense is top 50. This is the same parameters I put on last year's team, right? If you're in the top 50 in offense and defense, like scoring offense and total defense, I think you're going to you win 8 games. Like, I think that's a pretty solid recipe, probably if you looked historically through leagues other than maybe a league that was really top heavy for a year. Like if there's a SEC season or Big 12 or, Big 10 or ACC season or something. Big 12, not so much. A lot of those teams don't play defense and haven't historically, other than TCU and Baylor. But I think historically, if you kind of look at it, the top 50 in those two categories would get you there. Both Key and Scooter charmed the media and fans at the beginning. So why does Key feel so much better? Is it more that Key's not an obvious used car salesman like Scooter was? I can't put my finger on it. Brent is Brent. Brent is 100% authentic. That's why I'm a little concerned that he might drop an F-bomb on his radio show. Like, he is a legit, like, he is exactly the same when he's in front of the cameras in terms of the human being as he is when it's away. When I talk to him privately, like, same dude, right? Like, and, we can talk about whatever. And the thing with Jeff was, he had a social awkwardness, I guess would be the way I put it. I don't know how to describe it, but it came across as unauthentic. And he was very different talking to me personally, or even what we talked about with the team and stuff privately. And again, everything was kind of like a 2-second conversation. Like he was always in a hurry with whoever he was talking to. It wasn't just me. It was like anyone. He just seemed to always be in a hurry. And we talked, I can say this. I've had 2-hour, 3-hour conversations with Brent Key that are really interesting, even this summer, where we just talked about whatever, even non-football stuff. And that was hard to do with him, but it did the same thing with Paul Johnson. I think there's some people can sense authenticity, and I think it came across. Good. Oh yeah, make sure you guys hit the like button because that apparently helps my algorithm. Jim Williams, who's a media dude, tweeted, "I can confirm the Pac-12 have spoken with officials from the ACC ahead of a very important CEO and ad meeting set for later today. More to come as I get more information. Can you share any thoughts on what happens next for GT and the ACC?" Nobody knows. I mean, Georgia Tech's a very desirable product if it's invested in and the product's going well. And it just depends on what the seats are at the table, like what's going on with the league. I think all the ACC teams are still stuck in this grant of rights thing. And I think the only way it goes sideways is if they all like you would have to have like half the league try to leave at the same time. And I think that's the way it would get blown up. But it clearly is not going on, because if that was happening, the Big 12 would be trying to add like Virginia Tech and Pitt and whatever, like those teams that were in that weird alliance or whatever, but that's not going on either. So like there's definitely, I think there's a lot of people who have no idea what the hell's going on and are trying to throw darts at a wall and see what happens. And I definitely think that there's, if I were the Pac-12 commissioner, I'd sure as hell be calling Jim Phillips and trying to make something happen. Because clearly their people are pissed about whatever their TV deal is going to be. And there's more strength in numbers if they can partner with another league, especially one that is in a stronghold of college football. Whereas I think the Pac-12 is more NFL oriented areas of fan bases other than, a few spots. So adding teams to the ACC does not void the grant of rights. It's not how it works. They would just be signing into the grant of rights to join the league. Someone asked me how far behind Haynes King is in the QB race. I don't know. The kids all are behind. Zach Pyron right now is kind of leading things. Haynes is learning the offense and learning some ways that Chris Winkie wants to do things. It's the one other clear advantage that Zach Pyron has. He had a year of working with Chris Winkie and understanding what he wants. And so I think that people need to understand that even whatever happens out of the gate may not be how things play out. And I would tell the same thing to either of their parents if they were in the room with me right now. Like, you could never handicap these things. And, I've covered a couple different weird quarterback battles. I covered one where, Mark Richt refused to start Matthew Stafford early on in his career, like as a true freshman, when he was clearly like 8 times more talented than the other guys in the room. David Green at Georgia winning the job there. I've seen Paul Johnson stick with Tevin Washington because Tevin was just a tough dude who did not make mistakes. And he felt like that was the safer option. So you just never know with coaches, like how any of that stuff's going to play out and how Zach's going to play. If he's playing every down, how he holds up, how Haynes would hold up if he's playing every down. No idea. So I would just say we'll see how it plays out. I did say that it's from a lot of indications I've gotten from talking to different people. Haynes King was not developed the way he anticipated by Jimbo Fisher at Florida State. And he is far from the only kid that has said this privately or publicly or whatever. There's been guys who publicly called them out for their player development and stuff. And it was an issue at Florida State as well. So with some guys. There's a fake Jeff Collins in the chat. That's awesome. If PJ Fleck approached Paul Johnson and asked him how he's feeling, with PJ knowing full well Fleck was expecting the answer to Elite, what do you think Paul Johnson would actually say to him? I don't think I can say those words on YouTube. I'm trying not to get demonetized, so you can use your imagination. All right, let's get into the chat questions here. Do you think ESPN Fox will have to restructure their deals with SEC and Big Ten in 2030? I think no one has any idea what's going to happen in 2 years. Like I was talking to somebody tonight, I was like, I could not tell you. He was like, I couldn't tell you what was going to be the situation in 2025 right now. Like, I think everyone's living day to day at the moment in college football, and that's what's driving all of this. What's going on with basketball recruiting? A lot of big names. Yeah, they just finished the July evaluation period. Visits are going to start back up. OV's like kind of in the September range, so they'll start having kids in, and they'll bring them to football games and stuff like that, I'm sure. And that's kind of where you're going to start to find out a little bit more as those kids get back onto campuses. Right now is kind of a weird time with that. You don't see a lot of commitments and stuff. Most of that's going to come after the September, November visits, but they did offer a lot of big men in the last week and a half. So clearly they're doing a little bit of reset on the board there for the 2024 basketball class. Is GT more likely to join the Big Ten or the SEC again? If I see like no scenario where the SEC invites Georgia Tech back, and I don't see. I won't say I wouldn't see them accepting that if they were invited, because that's such a far fetched like even thought to have. I can see Georgia Tech joining the Big Ten. Do I think that's a good move for them in terms of football? Not really. I don't think the style play matches up, but obviously everything's in flux now, so who knows? Really excited about the wide receivers. It looks like Rutherford and Larry are penciled in. Who do you think will step up between Blaylock, Moore, and Lane? So yeah, Malik Rutherford and Christian Leary are the two slot guys. They'll play at times together on the field as well. They can both even line up outside if needed. They showed that in the spring game, so I'm not giving out state secrets here. Out of the outside guys, you left out Abdul Janae. I think he's got an opportunity to transfer from Duquesne. He's a big-bodied outside guy. I think Dominique Blaylock might be the dude if he can like stay healthy. He is really talented. He just hasn't. He was in an offense that like he was finally healthy last year. It was an offense that didn't throw the ball a whole lot on the outside, and they kind of focused on other dudes. So Chase Lane's interesting because he was in their offense was one that made Georgia Tech's look dynamic at times at A&M, and they just didn't throw the ball to him either. And he was a little miscast from what I understand, what they were asking him to do at times. DJ Moore's my dark horse guy, and he's like the guy I feel like could have like really helped them last year had he been healthy. And he had lingering ankle issue, I think it was, and just wasn't able to go. And they shut him down, which was the wise thing to do. Then Leo Blackburn may be back before the end of the year. Like if things, can stay on track with his rehab. The guys I would be a little more surprised to see would be like the Black Strain, Juju, Zion, like those guys I think are a little bit further behind at the moment. Avery Boyd had a really good spring, so maybe he pops out. Eric Singleton and Bailey Stockton are two freshmen that I'd really keep an eye on as well. Bailey came in as a walk-on and has had a great summer, and Eric Singleton's just apparently like an absolute freak and can fly. How difficult is it for Georgia Tech to get kids in the transfer portal versus other schools in the league? It's easier to get transfer portal students from kids versus high school if they're coming from college. Is it easier? It is easier, as my understanding, to transfer in than some of the high school kids. I had a buddy lay it out for me really well. He was talking about Oregon. So I forget what Georgia Tech's admission rate is. It's very low. I'm sure it's under 50%. And, I haven't looked at it in years. It comes up in conversations from time to time with people whose kids don't get in or something. But Oregon, for example, like Phil Knight, Oregon, the big football program, the school itself, not the athletic department, is I think at 96%. That's what my buddy was telling me. I'll have to double check this. Like I can't even imagine that. Like that's like basically letting in people, the most bare minimum people into your college, right? So Georgia Tech's not that. Like you've got to be able to do the work. Brent talks about that. His big thing is more about if he's going to take chances on guys, they have to be able to do the work. and he has some leeway with it. He talked about it at the ACC Kickoff. They've given him some leeway to take some kids. So what's harder at Georgia Tech is taking kids who are sophomore and juniors because of the way credits transfer. So we don't have liberal arts. Did I just go blue? That was weird. Um, anyways, you don't have liberal arts. It's hard to do that. So I look like on my screen right now. I look like Mr. Freeze. Do I look like that to you guys? That's weird. Yeah, I'm all purple. What the hell happened? Oh man, that's pretty funny. Let's try this. Now I'm even more purple. Wow. Apparently I've been, yeah. All right. Well, maybe I'll wrap it up here. Yeah, it does look like went to the black light room. I had a roommate that had his only lights in his room were black lights. I always thought it was like super creepy. Yeah, let me not zoom around in here. All right, let me see if I got any. I'll get one last question. Somebody asked me if I'm going to the golf tournament that the board's doing. If I can, I'll try to. I would like to show my face, but I appreciate everyone for joining, and I guess I'll check out now since I turned purple and try to figure out what the heck's going on with my gear. But thanks, much love to everybody, and I appreciate everyone. It's been a tough time with my family and stuff, so thanks for everyone for kind of hanging out and being understanding about that. But everyone have a good night, and we'll see you. I'll try to jump on next week again.